Welcome back, audience. Hope you're doing good. As always, cheers. My traditional tea slurp, and let's get into it. Well, in this video, I want to talk about consciousness as usual, but I want to share something that I recently discovered. Again, we're talking about the more of this chaotic and confused type of environment that we live in, the more it kind of pressures us. I don't know about you, but me definitely is to have clarity in life and understand uh, how it all works, what the fuck is happening, in other words, and what kind of game I'm playing. Because life is just a series of, ideally, what I would say, playfulness or play. Which, by the way, this is what I want to talk about in this video: the difference between the drive and play. Doing something out of play and doing something out of drive. Again, this is the matrix and the holistics type of uh, motions of life. One is out of incoherence and seeking, another one is through achieving coherence through alchemy, and there's no seeking going on, therefore there's no drive, but life is happening, which is a play. Okay? So we have two sides like that. First of all, before going into the details, which I have a pretty juicy details, by the way, fascinating to me, some things that I want to share. But before I go into that, I want to uh, share something that is quite simple, but you can kind of see a better definition of what is masculine and feminine in terms of consciousness and in terms of your uh, domains of life, your soul, your mind, and the body, which is feelings, emotions, images, thoughts, and in the body, uh, sensations. And essentially, that's what it is. Okay. Well, right. I'm going to get into the details a little bit further down the line. Now, so before I mention, in the consciousness, there's always a background. By the way, I see everything as this toroidal dynamic play in my mind's eye. And that's what I'm using to describe, and hopefully I'm communicating the same type of image um, from which I am deriving all my language. So, if you look at the toroidal field, of course, there's a circle, the center, right there, and if it's reciprocating toroidal field, you'll you will see the primary circle, right, like that axis at the center, right, and so that would be a an eye, if you will, where all of your experiences collide. Sometimes it's called uh, plane of inertia, and Earth or whatever, right? But there's this plane where all of your experiences take place. Essentially, it's like a ultimate eye. And when toroidal field splits, and well, it's actually original. It's never. It doesn't split, but there's a version arises. Some of the energy of this completely reciprocating toroidal field starts flowing into double toroidal field, and when it starts flowing into double, it creates what we call mind, and it creates what we call body, which are thoughts, sensations, and then because it splits into two, it creates something that is in between those two, and that's what we call a soul. That is like managing things between the mind and the body, and at the same time it's connected to the infinite toroidal field, which is infinite, and at the same time is connected to the temporal toroidal field, which is double toroidal field, which is finite. Okay, that's the magic of the soul. That the soul is connected to the infinite, but it also is connected to the finite. Mind is the world of time. Body is the world of time. Soul is the world of infinity and time put together, if you will. Ideally, once you alchemize it, that's what's really going on. But anyway, now I want to talk about the difference between the drive and play. Okay? But before I go into that, I want to say that I want to talk about the memory and pattern. Memory is the background of consciousness. It's basically like the magnet, that is like what kind of magnetism is sort of imprinted in that field, which by the way is like it takes the shape of mandalas and whatnot. But anyway, and the patterning. So the memory is memory, mother. It's all feminine. It basically describes the yin phenomena in terms of consciousness. Memory is that. It carries the memory. You have four types of memory. One, you can call it quantum, which is connected to the infinite field, and there's basically all possible combinations of memory that can exist. It's there. It's this void, right? So that's the ultimate goddess, the void, the great womb out of which everything stems from, right? And it has a capacity to contain all the memories, nothing and everything, right? It's this magnetic field, and then whatever is going to be born out of that, which makes basically whatever light is going to highlight, because of all the possible possibilities, light chooses to highlight a specific type of pattern. And so then when the light shines out of this ultimate void, that's the pattern that's going to generate. And that original pattern is this organizing principle, as what you can call divine spark, or what Jesus was calling Father. It's that organizing principle that is not yet differentiated. You can, and it's kind of a feeling of bliss, the peace and bliss, what I always talk about. So that's, we're talking about the spirit world, out of which everything stems from. Now, depending on that pattern, that's what's going to be imprinted in the memory of the soul. It's your soul memory is going to be arranged based on that pattern. And the soul is a world of emotions, and the world of ether, if you will. It is now how this bliss energy is being expressed and what kind of patterns, right? And based on what type of memory you have in your soul, that's the type of patterns, because when the light shines through that lens now, it creates this type of pattern, which was previously imprinted ideally through this, divine spark pattern energy, if you will. That happens through alchemy. I'm talking about now as an ideal situation, because of course, if you split that capacity for that divine spark to organize the memory of your soul, if you do that, then that creates the lack sensation in your heart, and then that creates a need for drive or seeking something in your mind, and then your body, in your thoughts, in your sensations. And that is the life lived in a dark way, if you will. Because the soul still has the old pattern that has not yet been old memory that has not yet been repatterned, if you will. Now it goes into, depending on kind of memory you have in your soul, these are type of emotions that are going to be in your soul, and these emotions are going to be imprinting the beliefs in your mind, which is a memory again, and then that, depending on that memory of beliefs, is going to produce certain types of patterns, which are thoughts. Depending on these thoughts, now these thoughts are going to be as patterns imprinted in the memory of the physical world, which is a conditioning. The physical world also has memory, which is what you would call conditioning, which is not the belief. It's different. I'm going to talk about, it's quite fascinating how they differ. And that's the physical world memory. And then depending on the physical world memory, these are the type of behaviors which are patterns that are going to be produced from there, and it goes into the circle, and then that's the end result. And then when you see this end result of the reality, that may trigger the negative feeling, and which means that it shows you something that is there to be alchemized, that is not yet they're still distorted in your soul, that needs to be corrected, and through alchemy you can do that. And this way you're in the process of like a growing your soul, because really what you are doing is that when you incarnate in this physical reality, there's a split, and split is through the distortion. This reality does that to you. It distorts the reality, like it, and because it is, the reality is just comes to you as distorted, you have to correct for the distortion. And in the process of correcting for that distortion, you're growing that crystal in your soul, that is was adequate to create the, your ideal reality in the world of contrast. That is, you know you see what I'm trying to say. That's the only way you can grow that crystal in your soul, which is the actual maturity of the soul. And then some people may say that that crystal is the soul, and that you don't really have a soul unless you begin this type of devotional and alchemical process in your heart. Okay, now, so that's pretty much my little rant about the memory and the pattern, how that is feminine and the masculine, and how the interplay of those creates this reality of consciousness. Okay, and as you can see, it's a chain reaction. Okay, and now I want to talk about the difference between the drive and play. How you can live life in a physical reality as play, and how you can live life in an astral or mind reality as play. Okay, the body, which is just not your body, but the body, right? Everything that's outside of me and inside of me, body wise, it's the body. Same thing with the mind, right? Now, so how does the drive works? The drive works, which is like what usually people in this matrix culture is trying to resuscitate and trying to cultivate, and they admire this thing. They admire the drive, right? The motivation, and people are trying to get motivation, right? And the motivational mechanism acts, of course, as a dopamine system, and everybody's talking about it, and they take this as normal, and that it goes like this: you move against some resistance, fighting, hunting, as an example, to build up the dopamine, and then you release in sex, and there's your cycle completion. That's like, it's build up the energy, release the energy, build up the energy, release the energy. And that's the motivational mechanism, is seeking resolution of that lack that is there as a feeling, and it's done in these kind of things, right? And so in an animal world, this mechanism is fine and is supposed to be working, right? Is as normal. But I'm just going to propose something different, and I mean proposing that this dopamine system, that the dopamine reward system, that is a type of trap for the human being, even though it works well in an animal, and in the only case it's applicable in a human being when there's a threat of the survival of the actual physical body, right? Like if you have a you know fear reaction because you saw like a dangerous animal, that's totally valid. You put in this mode of survival, and so you're not gonna be ignoring that fact that your life or your body is in danger. That's totally normal. But it's very rare when that happens, and when that mechanism is actually necessary. Normally your body is not in danger, and you don't need to engage into this uh, survival kind of thing, right? Survival reproduction, that's how the biology is wired. And it is exhausting to live life as if your body is in danger, which is not. Anyway, so that's the motivational mechanism. Okay, I looked at it very carefully. This motivational mechanism is sex driven and obstacle driven. It has to move against some obstacle towards the resolution, and it's that type of uh, functioning. And in the matrix society is taking this as a normal healthy functioning, but I'm saying that this is not a healthy human being functioning. That only in the rare cases that functioning must happen, and it happens naturally, spontaneously, and there's nothing you can do. Survival kicks in and you do it. But to actually operate their entire life as if you're in this mode of survival reproduction is retarded. So I'm gonna basically explain why and how, what is another way, and how dopamine system changes in your brain. Your brain changes completely. It's not seeking anymore that release through the sensation, through sexual release, right? Because that's what it's always about. There's another way. Anyway, now going to the mind, it's the same type of thing. This is what usually happens when people are looking at some things like, well, I don't have this, and I have an image that I do have this, and so now there's this image that I don't have this, and there's this image that I do have this, and so now again there's going to be a fight in your mind, which sometimes people accept this as a normal way of manifesting, which is not. This is a type of black magic, because again the energy is moving contra against something. There's something that is missing and something that I need to create. And so this type of imagination is not the real imagination that I'm gonna talk about. This imagination is still a type of violence, just like motivation in life is a type of violence as well, because it always moves contra. It derives energy, like I said in the previous video, through friction, fission, and seeks that type of resolution of pleasure. Okay. Now, in the mind, it's the same thing, or I should say, similar thing. This movement of thought that I must have this thing that is lacking there, um, it requires energy. It is possible to do, but like I said, it's still ego driven, because I think the Neville Goddard said that there's a difference between thinking or imagining from that reality as opposed to about this. There's this lack that, like, oh, I really need this because I don't have it. I really need this out of scarcity because there's a lack. And so you keep on putting energy in that picture out of lack. And even though if you get it temporarily and it just goes away, because everything was made out of lack through force, and it's a type of black magic. Okay, and so this is something that is accepted. To fight yourself, the drive is kind of celebrated, like, that person has a lot of drive. Which I was functioning on this as well, but not anymore. And um, so right now I'm doing things not for the same reasons that I used to do. And look what happens when you start looking at that negative feeling. Whenever this reality is giving you the sensations that create that negative feeling, it's showing you, look, this is from that negative feeling, from that seed. These sensations are right now in your reality. This is why you don't like it, because this is negative feeling there, and so you go there to alchemize that feeling. It's a game of connecting your attention with awareness itself. That's, you know it's a faculty that most people, I shouldn't say most, because I don't know, but it seems like it's most, a lot of people don't even use in life. Then don't put in the importance of how to put attention on this negative feeling and connect with the background of everything is a type of correction for that negative feeling, which is a torsion. Okay? And every time you correct it, you can almost like a fertilize the seed, if you will. And so now is going to be a different type of energy shining through your soul into the mind and body, because your soul still has, you know, your soul is still connected with the mind and the body. Ego is disconnected, but your soul still is. Ego uh, is something that completely disconnects the two, the mind and the body. And so there's this force is necessary to keep on reconnecting it, and so therefore you have these, drives and loops in life. So now, if you look at how neutron star behaves and black holes, which every center of the galaxy is a neutron star and a black hole collaborating, if you will. There's these gamma rays that they burst out, very high frequency, very coherent energy that they burst out. Now, this is something that you could equate to what's going on inside of you upon you finishing your alchemy. The bliss is arising there, the peace and bliss arise there. And now, that peace, bliss is your basis of the reality. Okay, not a punishment anymore, not a penalty, but the basis of the reality is bliss, already fulfillment. So there's nothing that you're going to do now in life is going to end you up in anything else but that bliss or potential alchemical process, which again, the basis of reality becomes peace, bliss. Okay, now when you have that basis of reality as such, it, first of all, what it does, it's in the up and down. If you look at how neutron star shoots the gamma rays, you'll see that it's up and down. The mind and the body both are energized with that energy, with that blissful energy. What happens then? That your thoughts are fulfilling and your sensations are fulfilling as well. So when you're imagining something, you're imagining from it, you are living it, because it has all the qualities of life due to that energy that is beaming into your mind. And therefore, the very fact of imagining is a is satisfactory. You see what I'm trying to say? So it becomes, now you're using play, not a drive, in your mind reality. The same thing with the physical reality. Sensations become super enjoyable in it of itself. So movement, like going to the gym or doing something in itself, becomes enjoyable. There's no seeking the outcome anymore, but the movement itself is why you're doing it, because it's enjoyable. It's just like a flavor of bliss, if you will, because you're so into all your senses. Okay, so you, the way you move through life is different now that your dopamine system is not going onto this, like, cycle of dumping it, building it up and dumping it, which is like always up and down. Now it's streaming uh, adequately in a continuous moment. So serotonin and dopamine systems completely changed now, because there is no motion for the outcome, because the sensations are loaded with that feeling that you would receive during the sexual release. In other words, the sensations and the world of sensations become type of deeply enjoyable and um, ecstatic, I suppose. Okay, so now there's this, you know, there's no seeking anymore and there's no drive anymore. Life is going on as play now. And it may look on the surface that, like, well, this is just the same life that another person is living. But if you look closer, you'll see that nothing is done out of lack anymore. Um, even and like, you're not a sucker or a slave to even sexual desire anymore. Not that you're no longer interested, but you're not a sucker for it. Like, it must happen organically, spontaneously, or because you're not seeking it anymore. You see what I'm trying to say? Like, it's just moving through life is enough for you to be completely ecstatic and enjoying the world of sensations. Okay? And that is when that bliss loads up your uh, physical world. The same thing happens with the mind. When you imagine something, it's delicious. It's because it's colored with that feeling already. It's already fulfillment. You're not doing it to get something, you're doing it because it feels really good on both occasions, in the body and in the mind. You're free. And this is what they call play. It's the motion of play versus the motion of drive. You're not moving against the reality itself anymore. You're not producing the energy through friction. You're producing the energy through fusion, which is the alchemy. And if life throws you again this negative feeling, alchemize, produce more of that bliss, and sit. And then you say, well, what makes the soul do anything then? Because it's in bliss, right? The playfulness makes, and that's usually creative process, which is also a play, is there, right? And of course, it has the masculine side of it and the feminine side of it. It's the whatever is creating patterns is masculine. Whatever is receiving that pattern as a memory is feminine. And so that's what happens in dance. A man's job is to create the patterns, and a woman's job is to feel good is like respond to these patterns. um, the same thing happens in the mind as well, and the same thing happens in the body. There's the masculine in the body is motion, and then the feminine in the body is sensation, and you need both to experience. You can't experience the oh, by the way, I should say the answer of what makes the soul do anything is the mystery and the novelty and curiosity. It is this experience of, for example, different sensations in life. So you move, that's a masculine action. Motion is masculine, sensation is feminine. And so, but you can't have sensation without motion, right? There has to be motion there. So there you go. So the movement is is reward in itself. And you do your regular stuff and whatever you are interested to do it, but you do it out of play, not the drive anymore. If you do all your fighting at the level of the kingdom of God, you do no fighting in the rest of your life, because coherence is already there. It's the only fighting that you have to do. You see, like, even if you're talking about, for example, like a physical conflict, or sports or whatever, this still can be seen as play, because the basis of your reality is bliss already. You're messing around, right? Like you're playing, and so you don't even take this serious as well. So you, even if you do something that is considered to be, like, let's say, a military action or whatnot, that is even done out of play, not out of fear or anything. Does that make sense? There's a difference between taking energetic and vital action and effort. Life is not done through effort anymore. Even like moving weight is because if the motion and sensation is enjoyable, and sometimes like I become super aware of this reality when I'm working out, and it is deeply enjoyable just to move the weights around. It has the reward in itself. Whereas before I would just counting and say, "Oh, I have to do 10, I have to do 12, or whatever." Now I'm not doing that. I am going as deep as possible into enjoyment of the movement. And so from the side, it will look like it's just person exercising just like another, but what happens in the brain and what happens on motivational mechanism is completely different. Okay, and that's what I'm trying to communicate here, that life has to be a play, and the only this drive, mental drive or the physical drive, is ridiculous, and we thought that it's a good thing, and that's how it's supposed to be doing, and that's we're supposed to be admiring and saying, like, well, that's somebody has a drive, like, that's masculine, but they're fighting with themselves and they're not enjoying their life, and it's nothing. It's corrupt masculine, and it's not what the true masculine is. Nothing out of drive will be done that is good. It's just not going to happen, because what kind of seed, what kind of result is going to create, what kind of fruit is going to create, it depends on the seed, of course. And this is why it's so important to make the basis of your reality blissful. The more it gives you these negative feelings, the more you alchemize them, and the more you let that bliss energy almost express itself, really. Okay, so when you are imagining something and the very fact of imagining feels amazing, it's right. It doesn't matter what you imagine, anything that you imagine has the tone of beauty and coherence. The same thing in the physical body. Doesn't matter what you're doing, all the sensations are deeply enjoyable. And so when a soul is playing some sort of game, creating something, and if it doesn't work falls back on the feeling of bliss. There's no risk, really. I mean, you've done all the risk. It's like, that's the paradox, man. It feels risky to do something and have like a negative response, but you do it, you have a negative response, you alchemize it, and so eliminate any kind of feeling of risk in your life. Because always you're going to fall back on this peaceful, blissful feeling. That must be the basis of reality. And so it's very different. There's a lot of experimentation, there's a lot of trying, but that's in that trying experimentation you can create something that is unique and new and never been done before, and has all these beautiful quality and feelings imbued in that thing, whether it's just like a movement in a dance that is just transitory and just it's there, some you feel it, somebody sees it and it's gone, or whether you put into something more solid in the physical world as an art. It carries that charge, it carries that energy. It's very important whether it was done out of love, as sometimes people call it, or whether it's done as out of fear. It's very important. It carries that energy. Okay. And so when there's no fear of messing it up, and that any kind of play is valid, then there's something magical that can be created. Okay? And that's the point. That's the point of all of my videos. Which, by the way, the belief that is a memory of the mind that creates the patterns, which are thoughts, is not the same as conditions, which is a physical reality. It creates the patterns, which are behaviors. This is what I've been looking very carefully at, and I was thinking why some people don't even believe in that thing, but they behave as if it's such. For example, I would ask the questions like, why do people sometimes are together, which is a physical condition and a fact, and even calling themselves, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, but they don't even believe in that. They don't even feel that, but the condition is there. And it's like almost a culturally conditioned, or for whatever reason they want that safety, and they want that condition that says that I'm not single, right, that I have somebody. But that's just, they don't even believe that. It's like, this idea of two people together in the same room, but infinitely apart in the heart, right? It's That's what I was asking questions like, why would the person that they don't even believe, don't even feel, would engage in that condition? And that's, you see it everywhere. You see it like how people act in a corporate environment. That's how they condition to act. That's the result of the behavior, the habit, if you will, right? And the habit is not only the brain wiring, actually, that's what it is, but it's also, your environment wiring. The nature has habit also. So it's like a physical memory that I put it like on one disk. Now I can see that there are four types of memories. Like I said before, the original memory is like this quantum field. The soul has your individual memory. This is pretty much like your identity, if you will, as an individual. Uh, and these are the etheric patterns that your soul produces, right? Which is, by the way, that's the part that you are always are. And and people say like, well, um, we're all uh, immortal, right? Like that we don't die, the soul doesn't die, and that only the body dies. Well, the way I see it is that you have capacity to become immortal. You have capacity to be individuated infinity. But without the alchemy, that is not done. It is not done. Without the alchemy, you're not individuated. Without the alchemy, you're still belonging to some sort of cluster. And so, even though you have a body, even though you have a mind, soul hasn't formed yet. Your soul is sort of like still in formation, I suppose. Still in the process of developing. And which, by the way, I also want to say something to make it quite simple. Of like something people call it. Sometimes people use words like 3D, 4D, 5D, and 6D, and just for the sake of simplifying everything, the 3D is, of course, the physical world. The 4D and 5D is the the astral world, the mind world, and then the 6D is the soul world, if you will. Okay. Uh, the 5D and the 4D. I mean, how to make it more simple? Okay. The 6D is the infinite causal soul environment. Uh, the 4D is the mind environment. The 3D is the body environment. And the 5D is this transitional causal environment that still has some ego there, which is not necessarily bad, but it's still there. It's in a transitional process. And so sometimes people may say, well, that person is kind of NPC. And there are people indeed who are functioning on the 3D level and they do not function on the mind level at all. They're just conditions, they're completely automatons, and they do not have a capacity to imagine, right? In a sense that change their reality, right? So, there are people like that. And then there's people, 4D people, who do have a capacity to imagine and use the mind to live life. And so that's another class of people, right? And then you have the 5D people, which are people who are already living in a soul, already feeling the feelings and already began some form of alchemy uh, that lives through the heart. These stuff, the people that live through the heart, and so they're growing their immortal soul. And once they're done, that becomes a 6D person, which they already crystallized that soul crystal, and now they're playing different type of game, which is usually just playfulness and creativity. Okay, and by the looks of it, it does exist, and we're not all created equal. We do play the levels of this game, and it's just a fact. Okay, and there's some people that you meet, and they're just 3D. They're just 3D. Doesn't make them bad, because 3D, 4D, or 5D doesn't make it necessarily bad. There could be a 3D person that is basing the entire life on, you know, influenced by right type of people who carry that energy, and therefore, because the 3D person will always rely on the 4D, 5D, and 6D people, and depending on what quality of these people, that's the quality of the 3D person. And then 4D, they rely on the quality of the 5D and the 6D people, and depending on that, that's the quality of the 4D person. And then the 5D relies on the 6D. You see what I'm trying to say? Okay. And if we don't have 6D morphos over here, then life is hard, um, because there's no organizing principle yet, and so everybody is still struggling with these archonic structures, and the life is struggle then, and that's the matrix way of living. Okay, and this is why you can. I think in the raw material they said that 6D is no longer can be possibly service to other, and the 5D is still could be, and then the 5D is basically the 5D individual is who um, who moved to the service to other, which the only thing it says, the service to self, service to other, the only thing it means is that do they have their own connection to source, or they still moving through the friction. And so the people who are the 5D but they still service to self, meaning they don't have that, they have to derive that from the reality. They're the ones who are the architects of the matrix, essentially, because they're the ones sustaining. But the more 6D people arrive, the five the less of these 5D people who are pulling all the strings are there, because you cannot be 6D without have alchemized your soul. And so the 5D people sometimes do the dark stuff, right? Which is all these things with what they do, but they're trying to create this false light, uh, dark light, dark passion in their soul, and that is service to self. And through this dark passion, there's that energy that fuels the creation of the black magic in the mind, and fuels this drive, um, to take action contra and against something in the physical world. So that's the dark path. But anyway, hopefully it makes sense. But it's a fact that something, meet 4D person, it's the 4D person. There's nothing you can do. They have not yet have the capacity for living through the causal reality. They may be on the verge of that, but they don't have that yet. If it's a 3D person, it doesn't mean that you treat them, but that 3D person is basically walking conditions. And so create this type of environment, that's the type of conditions and behaviors that you're going to see. That environment, you see what I'm trying to say? They just they're just beeps. Okay, so there, and that thing is a fact. That thing is a fact. And then some people may say that some people are still kind of in 2D and an animal level. They have not gone into the 3D. Maybe these people do exist, but most human beings are, you would consider them 3D. They have that capacity for running conditions of their life, right? They're not completely animals, they see what I'm trying to say. Anyway, okay. What else do I have to say about this? Anyway, the moral of the story was that there's a holistic way of living life and the matrix way of living life. The difference between the matrix and the holistics is that um, there's a motion from scarcity, from the lack, driving against obstacle, completing that, getting that reward, repeating the cycle over again in the mind and in the body level. But in a holistic way, after the alchemy, the bliss is the basis of your reality and peace. And then from there is an expression of that with no uh, with no consequences of, or even concept of failure. Everything is play and has the reward in itself. And so this type of brain is completely different to a person who is not living life like that. Okay. And there's nothing you can do about 3D people. They're not gonna start alchemizing. There's nothing you can do with about 4D people. They're not gonna, you see, like that. um Look, like that game kind of ended in 2012, and now we're sort of like settling into where we belong. And uh and then there's going to be a harvest in the next decade or something like that. And then wherever you are, that's the rest of your life, you're going to live in that particular density as that particular being. So right now it's almost decided who chose to graduate from 4D to 5D, from 3D to 4D, or from 5D to 6D. That's already been chosen. And so you cannot change that, and you can't drag anybody um, to graduate. They already chose that, their life situation. Okay. And honestly, this is why everything became so weird after 2012. And so now reality is very experimental. And this is the model that I'm using, and this is the model that I'm suggesting of how to, you know, you don't really need this model to live life really happy, but those principles that are, communicated in this model must be facilitated, right? And I do understand that I am not talking to most people. They honestly, like this is only for 5D and people who are graduating to 6D. Really, there's specific types of souls who are who have the capacity to alchemize their distortions in the soul to grow that crystal and become an immortal, individuated soul. That's what it's who this is for. This is why there's nothing. There's nothing here to sell. There's nothing here to make a good business out of. And the other things, I'm gonna have to do other things to make good business, which is not important whether it's 3D, 4D, or 5D. But this, what I'm talking about, is this is, by the way, the real way of creating your reality. You can see that a lot of people are just playing these games, and they are these teachers, and these are usually like 4D people who are afraid, seekers who are afraid to touch. At this point, they're afraid to touch the unknown. They're afraid to touch their own fear. They're afraid to look at it, so they're seeking. But it is a type of game as well. The Matrix is a type of game as well. It's just a lame game, like, for example, I like playing games. I like because everything in life to me is kind of game. Even if whatever you do, like it's business or sports or whatever, it's a type of game, and many people are involved in it, and you got to play it right. And Trump says, like, life is about making deals. Another way of saying life is a game, playing the game right. And you know what, when I'm playing the game and I see people that are not adhering to the principles of the game, basically cheating at the game, and you may say that they don't have a capacity to do otherwise, and they don't, because based on this principle that I've described, that everything is just like a memory in the pattern, whatever memory is in the mind, which is a belief, this is the pattern that's going to create, right? You cannot change that. You can change yours, and as you can see what it takes to change yours, it has to start from all the way from the beginning. And then you may have like a slight chance of influencing somebody else because you have your own organizing principle, and they may not have their own organizing principle, but that's okay as long as they are hanging out with you. There's a little bit of that imprinting in the right way, and that's what it is. That's why it's like this. This is why I said that the relationship between men and women is like quite simple. The woman has the capacity to open and close on all these levels, in the body, soul, and mind, and the man has the capacity to project, or listen the pattern, elicit the pattern, I suppose, or emit the pattern. It's like shining. This is the pattern of what I am in my mind. This is the pattern of what I am in my body. This is the pattern of what I am in my soul. That's the masculine way. And the woman is choosing whether to open to it or not to open to it. And that's all that's really going on between the people. And if women are not going through like devotional and alchemical process herself, then there's this naive innocence there, and there might be open to something that's culturally acceptable, like OnlyFans, which is a pattern built by a man, which technically whoever built it and is whoever's running, these are the pimps, you know, and the girls are obviously they are what they are, right? But this is just again, it's an interaction of the corrupt masculine pattern and the naive openness, and so there you got that result. And so this is why this idea that uh, I'm a strong independent woman is like, no, if you're a woman, you're gonna receive a pattern from somewhere, right? The pattern is going to determine what kind of woman you are. And if you are considering yourself to be free independent woman in the corporate world, then the corporate world is going to determine what kind of pattern that is, and it's going to imprint that pattern on you. And it may be completely different to what you feel yourself in the heart, but your mind and the body was conditioned now for this pattern that you engaged and thought that that's the way to live your life and whatnot. You see, it's all about this interaction of patterns and memories. The openness and the projection, I suppose. Maybe that's a better word for it, but right? And so man has a decision whether they project his pattern, and the woman has a decision whether to open up to that pattern or not. That's the type of interaction that's going on. And like I said, there's in the soul it's going on, in the mind is going on, and in the body is going on. The same thing. Anyway. I'm just trying to make something that is complex into something that is super basic and simple. Which life has to be simple and basic. It's if it's complex, it probably is a good sign that you went off the rails. Anyway, that's enough for today, guys. Peace. I'll see you in the next one.